Hello, and you're very welcome to episode 77 of The Fifth Court, a podcast on legal affairs presented by myself, Peter Leonard, barrister and mediator.
Myself, Mark Tottenham, barrister and trust and estate practitioner.
Mark, good to see you as always. And you will recall last week we focused on local elections, which are obviously dominating all the lampposts around this part of the world and all over our dear nation at the moment because the local elections and European elections are on. And we brought in our colleague, Barry Ward, who's a senator and a barrister.
And former councillor.
Former councillor. 10 years he did on Dunleary-Rathdown County Council. And that was so informative. Wasn't it a brilliant interview?
Yeah. I mean, he made a very good case for reducing the number of councillors, which may not be popular among his former colleagues, but also for increasing their powers. And I think,
but the big thing was he stressed the value of local democracy and local representation. And he did it in a brilliant way. It's really good, folks. If you're kind of thinking about voting and whether you should vote in the local elections, listen to Barry. And I guarantee you'll get out and vote after listening to that. Well, tonight we welcome to the studio solicitor Krystian Boino, who is a very interesting person. Krystian is originally from Poland and he specialises in personal injuries, employment law and other commercial stuff, other litigation. And no surprise, he is the go-to guy for a large portion of our sizable Polish community who find themselves in need of legal representation. And he fulfills a really important function.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, right up until around the year 2000, there was a very small overseas population in Ireland, and now it's huge. And I think I'm right in saying the Polish community is the largest. And people like Krystian are obviously making a huge contribution to their integration, to their representation.
Yeah, this is going to be really interesting. Really, really interesting. But first to three cases that you have identified from the Decisis website. So first case tonight, a judgment had been obtained against a company in the circuit court, but the creditors sought to examine the directors of the company for the purposes of execution, and this was refused in the circuit court as the circuit court rules do not provide for such procedures. So they went to the High Court. So this is the case of O'Connor versus Lackabeg Limited and a decision of Mr. Justice Simons.
Yeah, so when you get judgment in any court, there's a procedure that they call discovery in aid of execution, which is basically where you're entitled to seek information from the judgment debtor, and you can apply to cross-examine them on that information. That procedure is in the rules of the superior courts, but it's not provided for in the circuit court rules. So an application was made for that in the circuit court, and the circuit court judge said that, well, there's no provision in the rules. However, there is a provision in the circuit court rules. It's Order 67, which says that where there is not a rule in the circuit court, the procedure in the High Court will apply. So what Mr. Justice Simons said was, thanks to Order 67, Rule 16, it is possible to apply in the circuit court for discovery in aid of execution against the directors of a company.
Okay, so a very technical ruling, but an important ruling.
Very important.
Okay. Yeah. Next to a bank which claimed over 11 million against the estate of a deceased person, relying on a guarantee. So obviously the person had passed away, but there was a guarantee outstanding and the bank said, we want our money. The estate sought to argue that the deceased had been under undue influence of his son and had received inadequate legal advice. So this is the old classic. So what happened with the guarantee, Mark? Was it enforceable? And I should say this is Everyday Finance designated activity company versus Flood, a decision of Ms. Justice Stack.
Yeah, this is a case where, as so often happens, a parent was asked to provide a guarantee for the debts of a child. So the son had entered into very substantial loans for over 11 million. The father had executed a guarantee, and when the son wasn't able to pay, the bank sought to enforce the guarantee. Now, by this stage, the father had died, and so they tried to enforce it against the estate. Now, the estate said that the son had exercised undue influence over his father, and that the father had received inadequate legal advice. And the court was satisfied that the legal advice provided to the father was inadequate. However, there was no particular reason for the bank to be aware that the father had inadequate legal advice, so therefore the guarantee was enforceable.
Okay, so, and yeah, that's kind of an unusual one. So basically, you couldn't get away with it as such by saying, he put pressure on him.
Exactly. Well, I mean, maybe if the father had still been alive, he might have been able to make a different argument. But certainly, when it came to the executor of the estate trying to avoid the debt. They
just
said,
to tease that out with you a little more. So what you're saying, the finding in this was there was inadequate legal advice to the father. So the father wasn't in full control when he made a decision to go guarantor. But the court focused on the fact that the bank knew nothing about this, so the bank can't be blamed for that. Is that what you're saying?
Well, the bank is entitled to rely on a guarantee on its face. So the father had executed this guarantee. He had legal advice. Now, when the court looked at it, they said, well, why would you execute a guarantee for such a large amount of money if you'd been properly advised? So they said that the legal advice may have been inadequate, or they said on its face it appeared to be inadequate. However, the bank had given the loan to the son in reliance on the fact that there was a guarantee. The bank was entitled to rely on the guarantee, and the guarantee was enforceable.
I'm going to stop it after this one, but I have another question for you in relation to this. I'm just curious. I mean, undue influence is something that happens separate to the bank.
Oh, yeah,
okay?
Exactly.
So, I mean, somebody is unduly influenced in relation to a financial transaction which goes wrong on them. So the bank will always be in the dark. So that's why this ruling suggests that it would be very hard to establish undue influence. Now, I haven't read the judgment. I'm relying on you, so maybe I'm getting the wrong track.
This, I think, is the point. If it was the son seeking to rely on a contract against the father that had been procured by way of undue influence, it would be a different matter. But the bank is a third party and had no particular reason to think that there was undue influence involved.
Okay, all right. Well, look, we'll leave it at that, and thank you for explaining it, and sorry for all the questions. Finally, we turn to a case where the court was asked to transfer a vulnerable minor to the UK. Again, kind of difficult case, where there were no available beds in Ireland. Obviously, this minor needed treatment. So this is the case of a minor respondent or a respondent BD, and this was a decision that had to be made by Mr. Justice Heslin.
Yeah, so this, as you said, it's a very vulnerable minor exposed to serious harm at high risk, and basically there was not appropriate therapeutic treatment available in Ireland. There was not a bed available in an appropriate institution, and so the order that was applied for and granted was to transfer this minor to the United Kingdom, and the condition of the respondent was summed up. They said that she is missing from her current placement more often than she is present. She's at risk of serious physical injury to herself or others. She's at risk of sexual exploitation. She's at risk of becoming an active drug user or addict. And she has no insight into the high level of risks which are posed to her. So basically they're saying this is somebody who really needs proper treatment.
Absolutely.
It wasn't available here.
Okay, thank you for explaining that. Back shortly with Krystian Boino. Clio, the most recommended cloud-based legal software used by 150,000 lawyers worldwide. Want to streamline case management, automate tasks including your client intake process and billing while supported by a team of people 24/5. Visit clio.com/IE.
Silence in the Fifth Court.
We are delighted to be joined in the studio today by Krystian Boino, who is a solicitor originating from Poland, and we're going to learn a little bit about his practice and his background. And he is going to tell us about the experience of representing Polish people living in Ireland and various other aspects of his work. So, Krystian, thanks very much for joining us here in the Fifth Court.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
So maybe you could just tell us a little bit about your own personal background. You grew up in Poland and decided to study law there originally?
Yes. It was a decision from the primary school that I want to study law.
Oh, really? And what was it that inspired you to want to be a lawyer?
I just always argued, I think, with everybody around. So right. that was the background. Or I was maybe always the first in the class. If there was a problem, I need to talk to teacher. Maybe not first in the fights, but first to argue. Okay. With the teacher or whatever, so I would stand up even for the group of people. So and then you have the meetings with the counselors when they are trying to guide you what you may do, and she was very quick with me to say, no, that's the good choice.
Okay, so you weren't just an arguer; you were an advocate for other people, even at school.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, right. As I remember right now, that's how it all started. So that was all that way. So studied law in Wrocław. So
Wrocław,
that's Breslau, German town, used to be before the Second World War. So that's southwest of Poland.
Okay. And you come originally from Katowice?
Outside Katowice. So that's about an hour and a half drive right now. Used to be 2.5 hours. Right. We have the motorways right now.
I see. Okay.
So moved down there to study. It's 5 years in Poland when you study law.
Right. And you qualified as an advocate in Poland?
Yes. Then after the university, after the 5 years, you can do a different type of trainings. You can become a barrister. You can become what I am as well, a Radca Prawny. That's kind of solicitor.
Okay.
You can become a judge or a prosecutor.
So you have the kind of split profession there where you can be either a solicitor or a barrister, but you can also become a judge kind of immediately out of law school, can you?
You can nearly, and that's what I was doing. So I started the apprenticeship to be a judge trainee. So training to be a judge. That's 3 years. Recognized back then, I don't know how it is right now, back then it was recognized as the best training.
Okay.
So yes, you can, by age of 27, you can be a judge.
But you didn't become a judge?
No.
Okay.
And no, I didn't become a judge. There were several reasons. One of them was I thought I don't have the experience and the knowledge to apply the law as a judge at the age of 27. So I disagree personally with the way that the system is set up, and it's still the same in Poland.
Sure.
It's much better organized here. The way that you can become a judge at a certain time during your career.
Can I just come in there, Mark? Just a little bit now. You're a young-looking man, Krystian, but just in terms of your background, I mean, were you there in the good old days before the fall of the Berlin Wall, and your experience kind of Poland and how it has kind of the legal system, kind of in terms of Iron Curtain days, and then coming out of that into kind of modern country, or am I on the wrong track?
Yeah, not on a wrong track, but I was just very young. 1989, I was 10.
10, okay. So you are a young fella. That's what I was saying.
Yes. But it was 1989 when the wall collapsed in Berlin. I was 10 at that time, so not much knowledge of pre-1989 in terms of how the system worked and everything. From books you were learning. Yeah, there was a transition then. You can then see the...
And Poland was very much on a fast track to joining the European Union. And like ourselves, no doubt, the influence of European law and the courts in Luxembourg and the CJEU.
Yes, huge influence.
I mean, that's obviously had a big influence in Poland.
Yes, so that Poland joined 2004 European Union, Ireland 1973, correct?
Yes.
So it's a 30 years gap. So 2004, so all the preparations started. I was already a student. So I was already studying European law between 1998 and 2003. So even before we joined. So everything was getting ready. There was a lot of legislation, loads of changes. It was like hundreds of acts were passed, every couple of months just to do this compliance with the acquis communautaire. Is it? I'm not good at French, but
well, I'm going to defer to Mark on that. I don't know. Are you any good at French, Mark? Are you?
I used to speak reasonably good French.
Oh,
but,
very good. Well, I did it for the leaving cert, but anyway.
Okay.
Well, he's always much better than me at everything anyway. But so can we go back just to kind of Polish democracy and how it settled in and the evolution of the country over that period of time before you left and came to Ireland, and then we'll be talking about that. But I'm just curious about your kind of experience on the ground in Poland, kind of growing up and a country sort of evolving, post the Russian influence, for example.
Like big changes when you look retrospectively right now, what kind of childhood we had. It was still happy, but it was not a situation where you may be 10 or 12 and you will fly with your parents to Spain or to Tenerife. We didn't even know that Tenerife existed. You may have it on geography lessons, that it's some islands that belong to Spain.
That might have been no harm.
And that's about it.
But anyway.
But that's how it was. It was still happy, but you will go south to visit mountains. You may go to Zakopane.
Yes.
Mark was down there back in 40 years ago. You may go on the Polish coast. We have a nice Polish coast. So it was a happy childhood, but it was within Poland. So all the traveling aspects that did not really exist. It was not.
And in terms of things like freedom of speech and whatever, I mean, you always have the impression that under communism you need to be very careful what you said. I mean, was that something that was apparent even as a child?
I would not have a recollection.
Right. Okay.
You see, My memories, I was always saying what I was going to say.
well, as the man said, you experienced freedom of travel, and you exercised that, and you came to Ireland. So tell us about how you got to here.
Yes, that was I came here to follow my wife. She was recruited by Cromlin Hospital in 2004 in Poland, in Warsaw. So she was recruited and she came to work as a theater nurse in Cromlin Hospital, where she is still till today's date. So 20 years she works in Cromlin Hospital. And I followed her when I finished my training. So my training finished 2006. So I said to her, I will come for 6 months to improve my legal English, and then we'll see what happens. And I'm still there after.
And by that stage, you'd qualified as a solicitor or the equivalent of a solicitor?
Then I qualified as a judge. Right. I had my exams September 2006. That's the most difficult exam I ever went through. It goes for 5 hours, and you're questioned by Court of Appeal judges for 5 hours. It's just the brain melts. But that happened in September. So then you have some free time that was supposed to be here in Ireland for a couple of months.
To qualify as, obviously you're highly educated and highly qualified, but it's in Poland, and you come to dear old Ireland, and we have our own standards and we have our own kind of professional exams that people need to pass in order to qualify and be a legal professional. So what did you have to do to so your qualifications were recognised here?
That's where the EU kicks in again in my life and life of the others as well. So once I was qualified as a judge, automatically I could be admitted to the role of the solicitors in Poland. That's what I did. That was end 2006. Then I came to Ireland. There is an EU regulation for years which allows to recognize the professional title. Okay. So I first applied to practice as a foreign EU lawyer, which means basically you have to work with Irish-based solicitor. You still have to pay for your practicing certificate for your insurance. And then after 3 years, you can apply to the Law Society to be admitted without any exams, but you have to show 3 years of experience. Okay. Here it would be to show cases that you represented clients.
Within Ireland?
Within Ireland, yes.
Okay.
And what kind of law were you doing during that period?
Yes. So I waited a bit more than 3 years. Again, that was a learning process. I was then learning again a lot. It's a common law, completely different. But yes, we were representing clients' litigation employment law. There was a family law done by my boss at the time that I was working with her. So there was a family law. She was doing conveyancing as well. So I was learning a bit of this as well with her.
And was she Polish?
No, Irish.
Irish, okay.
Irish. I started actually with William. He was Irish. And then I moved to Joanne, Irish as well. No, it was Irish. Okay.
So tell us about the cultural experience of, as we said, you're highly qualified in Poland, but now you're practicing in Ireland. It's a country that's completely new to you. You followed for love. You joined your wife here. So what was all that like? You know, suddenly working in an Irish firm and operating in the Irish system. What was your experience of that?
Challenging, which is nice. It's a challenge. You have to learn. You have to start reading the case law. I'm still very bad at remembering the name of the cases. That's not how I was educated. In Poland, you have a statutory act, so you'll be quoting whatever paragraph 24 of certain act to say certain thing, and exactly the same you can find in Irish case law. So at the end of the process, the outcome of the law, of the thing in applied law is the same. It just comes from case law in Ireland. It comes from regulatory, from statutory instruments in Poland.
But you do have case law of a sort in civil law systems.
There is,
I mean, they have. What's the philosophy of jurisprudence?
But it's not as strong as it is in common law system.
Yeah.
The judges will observe and apply existing case law coming from higher courts. It may be due to the respect and also out of the fact that if you will not apply, you may be challenged on appeal and it may be overturned. So the judge will apply because that's the way that it should be done. But it's not compulsory. They may depart or they may not apply it.
And from your point of view, were there any big surprises in Irish law? I mean, having trained as a judge in Poland, did you come here and think, that's amazing, in terms of either things that are better or things that were worse?
No. After this nearly 20 years of experience, my opinion right now is that the common law system actually better suits the needs of the people, because there is more of the freedom that the judge has when he applies the law within the with the boundaries of the common law.
The flexibility, the discretion of the judge?
There is more, the discretion of the judge, exactly. Okay. And there is far less examples in Ireland that you may lose the case on technicalities. And when I say technicalities, it could be, for example, that you will be late submitting your list of witnesses or a certain documentary evidence, or you will be late with your appeal. It will be much harder in Poland than to try to bring a motion for the extension of time that it will be in Ireland. Of course, it's not that easy that you may do whatever you want. Even if you're late, you will be allowed. Yeah, but that's my feeling. In Ireland, you are really given the chance to argue on the merits of the case, not to lose on
there you go, Mark. And
technicalities.
There I'm thinking that the judge has been very harsh and not giving me all that leeway that I want. So we get a lot more here in Ireland than you get over in Poland. Tell us about how you went out on your own or got into a firm. You qualified as a solicitor and, started representing your own clients then, Krystian. Isn't that the case?
Yeah. I was nearly representing my clients from really day one, of course, with supervision and help with other colleagues as well. Irish colleagues. That you may go, you may ask the question, you may ask for some guidance or for help. I was working as a solicitor employee till 2013 as a solicitor. And then in 2013, we formed a partnership with Joanne. She's an Irish solicitor.
Okay. And what's her name?
Joanne Hoban.
Joanne Hoban.
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
So it's Hoban Boino or Boino Hoban?
Hoban Boino Solicitors.
Yes,
it was till December 2021. Then we split, and she joined another practice in Leixlip, and I stayed in Dublin in Capel Building, and I practiced on my own. The thing was, it was no argument when we split. It was just because the way that probably the practice was growing, that was all of this, foreign speaking, mostly Polish clients on my side.
We're going to talk about that now because that'll be fascinating.
Yeah.
And so that's it. I mean, look, solicitors, how do they get business? They can put up a lovely brass plate outside their place of work and people can walk by and say, oh, I need some legal advice. I'm going to go into that individual and ask them to represent me. But more often than not, it's word of mouth and it's, tradition, etc. So you're a Polish guy working in Ireland. We know we have a huge population of Polish people living here. So how did the word filter out that they had one of their own, if I can use that phrase, there available to represent them? So how did that establish and kind of manifest itself?
Yes, I remember that starting back in 2006-07, I was giving free legal advices through the Polish church. There was a Polish church, still is, St. Odin's Church on High Street.
Yes.
Just by
Christchurch Cathedral, yeah.
Exactly, yes. So I was giving a free legal advices to people. So it was announced by the priest, Father Jarek, at the time, and then he gave me a room, and I was giving it was free of charge. It was for me a learning process, and then also a way to help people just to see what are the problems that people are facing. Then even there was a Polish government that was supporting this as part of supporting Polish people abroad. Okay. So for, I would say, a year and a half, I was kind of hired and paid wages by Polish government.
The diplomatic service?
Yeah, by Polish. No, it was coming from the Polish, same from the Polish Dole or Senate. Okay. So the higher chamber, they have the connection with the Poles abroad. And they were financed.
So they had a budget for that, basically, to
there was a budget there,
to represent Polish
so
people abroad.
We were helping. So that was the way.
And at that stage, what were there particular issues that Polish people were experiencing when they were new to Ireland, new to the experience of being, in a foreign country with a strange language, finding housing, finding employment? Were you dealing with all of that, or were there particular issues that came up again and again?
There was a lot of issues around the family law, as it always happens. I never enjoyed practicing in the area of the family law, but I was helping as much as I could. There was loads of issues around the area of the support to people, also people with
social
disadvantages, social welfare type of things, and a lot of employment law. Sure. Loads of employment law. That was the issues. Employment law was big as a part of those advice process.
And can we just have a sociological chat for a second, Krystian? The Polish community itself, okay, so obviously in the last 20 years, it's become a very important feature of, I suppose, the population of this country. I mean, 100,000 Poles, am I right? Maybe even more than that?
There was more. There's probably around 100,000 right now.
Okay. And what's their experience been like in Ireland, generally?
Very good.
People are happy to stay?
Yes, if they are staying 20 years. The big wave came between 2004, 2006, I believe, maybe 7. And if they stayed, I think they are happy if they stayed. They're buying houses, raising families.
So you're getting a lot of conveyancing work, are you?
I don't do conveyancing, but I know they are buying houses.
And is a reasonable portion of that population kind of temporary, people who come here for a couple of years and go back to Poland or elsewhere, and then another proportion of it, people who've stayed and decided to raise their families and effectively kind of become dual citizens?
A lot of people left, especially construction workers, know, during the 2008 when there was the economic crash that happened. A lot of people left, especially on the construction. On the construction, there were still people then coming, working in the IT sectors, for example, not in such big numbers as it used to be.
Okay. So let's go back to the work you do representing people. Okay, so you started off mainly employment law, then you moved into personal injuries. I mean, they're kind of...
general litigation.
The
litigation can be divided onto 2. I do represent not only Polish clients in litigation, and then, a lot of this would be personal injuries. I also do litigation defense work. And the defense work will be for mainly Polish companies who ended up in litigation in Ireland for whatever reason.
Okay, so they go to you as well?
Yes,
okay.
Yes. Then in most cases, the way it happens is that there is already some legal dispute that is known by their Polish lawyers. Those Polish lawyers then are looking to speak to someone in Ireland, and then they will find me. I would say they are coming to me because they know I am also a Polish registered, and qualified lawyer.
Okay, and can I just ask you a slightly controversial point? The experience of Polish litigants in the Irish courts. I mean, there is a feeling out there. I have represented many nationalities in Irish courts, and there is a suggestion sometimes that non-nationals get a harder time. Now, it depends where they're from. People are from a range of countries, etc. But is that your experience, or have you ever seen that people who are kind of not Irish get a slightly different treatment? Have you ever experienced that?
It's not about getting different treatment. It's about your language barrier creates another obstacle in the process. And that's the way it is. You see, when you go and you represent your client in court and your client is giving evidence, you're hoping that the judge will properly assess that your client is genuine, he's telling the truth. But if there is an interpreter in the process, who is actually being assessed by the judge? That's the question. Sure. Are we assessing the interpreter?
That's
because
a huge issue.
That's where the judge looks.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's a huge issue.
Okay. Now, examples from life then where things may go wrong for no reason. Some Polish people, they do understand a lot of English. They speak very little. When you add stress of the courtroom, plus they are just ashamed that they cannot really speak and they should, they just say, no, I'm not even trying to answer in English. I want the interpreter.
Yeah.
Then it goes to the cross-examination and the barristers for the other side ask the question, and then the answer starts in Polish before even it was translated, and it creates confusion. I saw this a few times with the judges, and I had to explain my client that they do understand English. I never said they do not. I said they have an interpreter because for those different factors, they don't want to give the answers in English. But there is already this lack of trust. You see, are they hiding something? Why they are not trying to speak in English if they understand? Because the question was put in English. Yeah. They could clearly understand and they started giving the answer.
And do you think there's anything the court could do to improve the process, or do you think it's just an inevitable part of there being an interpreter involved in the equation?
No, I would say that there was a lot of accommodation that was done in different parts of the court system. It's different how it works in the employment, in the WRC right now. It used to be AT, and in the labor courts, the way that it's arranged, because the interpreters are provided by the state. In the litigation, in the general litigation, you have to hire and pay for your interpreter. But I would say that what can be improved is the quality of the people who are actually providing the interpretation services.
Okay. Is it a qualification issue or a training issue? I mean, are there...
No, it's the experience issue.
Yeah. Okay.
If someone will ask me today, would you go and translate for me in court? I would say no. I will not be comfortable doing this work.
And so efficiently, you have to be able to do it really fluently and kind of get the flow of language going.
And you have to know what your role is. And some of the people, they just do not understand. They actually do interpretation in the meaning that they interpret what was said by the witness. Okay?
Rather than just relate the information and the facts.
Example from life. Years ago, a case in labor court. One of the questions was, did you appeal the decision of dismissal? And the client responded in Polish, because there was a translation. No, because the boss told me it's no point, the decision was made. The interpreter just put the interpretation, no appeal. I'm like...
Yeah. So the meaning has completely been lost. Absolutely.
It's a huge difference. There was a big reason why he did not appeal.
Yes, of course. No, I get that. And I mean, that's a huge issue, actually.
Yeah.
And just in terms of interpreters, I mean, are they properly paid? I mean, it is a huge piece of work. It's very valuable. And as you say, they're highly skilled. Are they properly remunerated by the courts?
I would say no. And that's the reason why the quality is not so good. Because then some people with the qualifications really may move to go to some other jobs which are better paid than the interpretation.
Okay, well, that's a factor, Mark. So we can start a campaign here now. Yeah. Absolutely. You
see, another factor is for the interpreter, you have to book them for a certain date for hearing. As you know, not everything goes on the hearing for different reasons, because cases settled, they are withdrawn.
Well, we know Mark is a big fan of delay cases.
And then that's the problem for them, you see. And people are trying to say, no, you got the 24-hour notice of cancellation, no payment. And he said, I booked this day. There was only 5 other questions to go somewhere else in court, or to go some medical examination and interpretation, or, I don't know, giving evidence on Garda or interviews. I couldn't take it because they wanted me for this day. And right now you're telling me 24-hour notice, no needed anymore, and 0 payment. Difficult.
Can I ask you, you obviously you've dealt with a lot of Polish people, but there are a lot of people in Ireland now from all over Eastern Europe. And I mean, do you find that you are representing, say, Estonians, Lithuanians, Hungarians, or are you aware of there being qualified solicitors who are in a position to represent people from other countries?
I'm not aware. I'm aware there's some representation for Romanian people. I also have a few Romanian clients. I had Lithuanian, Latvian clients, Czech, Slovak. I don't know if there's any solicitor with qualification who represents them. There will be probably employees who provide them to bridge the language barrier between the Irish solicitor and the client, that they provide the translation services, employees, secretaries, or some legal execs in the offices.
And do you find it all that are you representing any Irish clients, or do you still predominantly find that you're representing?
No, I do represent Irish clients. I even remember cases where Polish people referred their friends or neighbors or whatever to Polish solicitor.
Sure.
Originating from Poland, and you can represent Irish clients, which is great if they have the trust in me to go and represent them. That's great.
And do you have a number of Polish colleagues who are doing the same thing as you here, Krystian? Are you the original and the only one?
No, I'm not the only one. I don't know how many right now are qualified. We even have right now Polish people who went through the black hole over the years, and they qualified as solicitors. I know one who used to come and do some practice with me. Bartek, I think he's qualified solicitor right now. There is Marcin who works, he qualified through the training in Ireland. So he's a solicitor. So there is a few Polish people.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's an incredible service to your fellow country people that you provide, Krystian. And obviously you make a great contribution to the Irish legal landscape as well. So, Mark, we're going to wrap this up. We've come to our time at this stage, so we want to ask him about a book.
The final question: do you have a book or a film or something you'd like to recommend to our listeners?
Yes, the book I am currently forced to read. It's forced by my wife. How to how to disconnect with your smartphone. So, but I am not recommending this book. I am having a hard time going through it.
That's the name of the book, is it?
There is a problem. Yeah. How to disconnect from your smartphone.
I think I need to borrow that off you.
Yeah, but I would say Harari, 25 Lessons for the 21st Century. Very good book.
That's Yuval Noah Harari.
Exactly.
And he's the man who wrote Sapiens and Homo Deus. Yeah.
All three books. All three books actually very good.
Well, Krystian Boino, thank you very much for joining us here in the Fifth Court.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
The Fifth Court will adjourn until next week.
So that's all from this edition of The Fifth Court. We hope you have enjoyed it. Can I say a huge thank you to solicitor Krystian Boino for coming in and telling us about the wonderful work he does representing Polish citizens. He represents the world. He's a lawyer. He's not just a Polish lawyer, and we're not trying to put anybody in a box, but I think he fulfills a very important function in Irish society.
Yeah, I mean, as our society gets more multinational, obviously people like Krystian are going to be needed increasingly, who have an understanding as to the background of the people coming here, are able to speak their language and reassure them as to the legal representation they're giving.
No, really good, really good. Before we go, I would like to say a big thank you to our producer, Cunalo Moroyne, and to Alison O'Dwyer of the Dublin South Podcast Studios for their wonderful work in recording this show. So from me, Peter Leonard.
Myself, Mark Tottenham.
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon in the Fifth Court.